Of you have good energy, have come back after a good lunch with good energy. So let's get started the next presentation. It's going to be a panel discussion about storytelling through beer packaging. Weave a story behind the labeling to get your brand across your consumers. The panel discussion will host breweries and also packaging solutions providers to provide insights, trends in packaging, and insights into weaving a story into labeling for the consumers for the beer and brewing industry. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together to welcome our panel moderator, Mr. Manu Mishra, founder, Consulting. All right, inviting our panelists for the panel discussion. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Anish Varshni, co-founder and Chief Innovation Officer, Lattenberg Brewers Private Limited. Up next on stage, let us invite Mr. Nikhil Moore, Creative Director, Jungle Gym Studio. Off to you, Mr. Manu.
Good evening, everyone. We're all back from lunch, hopefully with a few beers in us. And we're going to start our next panel discussion, which is essentially on storytelling through beer packaging. With a proliferation of options in packaged beers, from retail bottles and cans to the recently instituted growlers and soon to appear crowlers, the number of options available to today's consumers are many. Thus, communicating what your beer and your brand stand for become even more important, as it can not only influence consumer decision-making, but also establish an ongoing relationship that helps in the evolution of consumers into brand loyalists. How does one use this limited brand real estate to weave a compelling story? I'm really happy to be on the panel with you guys. Anish, I'm a fan of your beers. I have a very burning question for you that I'll come to. And Nikhil, we go back a while, and I love the sort of work you do. So just getting into the first question already, let's talk a little bit about geography. So what role does geography play in the creation of a brand story? Is it truly a differentiator when it comes to establishing a brewery's antecedents by portraying it as a son of the soil? Nikhil, you want to go first?
So I think that geography, when it comes to it's more about like who's your core group that you as a brewery are attracting, and that definitely does. If you focus on that, if any of you were there for my talk before this, I was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and as you go up, you have this group which is there like one step before the top, which is this group which really feels the need for connection and they want to be with people, like-minded people. So I wouldn't say like it's son of the soil as such, but more like, yes, we are from, let's just say that we are from Pune. We're a Pune-based brewery or a Bangalore-based brewery, and we are talking to this specific group of people. That definitely sets the ball rolling. It may not be the end goal. It's definitely not the end goal because the numbers are not there. But it sets that original connect to the brand, like the evangelists, like the brand evangelists are from there. So I think definitely talking to them in their language, making sure, like you can see even brands like Kimaya do that, right? Kimaya is talking in Marathi to the Marathi Manus, and like it has created like brand love for that very specific segment, and then they can message differently and ahead of that, to other places. Yeah, I think that answers it.
Right. And Anish, having a product that is available in retail, when you're looking at a bottled product where availability is going to be throughout the country, what are your thoughts of reflecting where you guys are coming from on that geographically?
So geography plays an important role when you're trying to build your brand story, right? It depends on what kind of brand story you want to build. Today, I'll give you some examples, like a company like Brewdog. Even though they are from Scotland and they mention they are from that region, but they don't portray it in their brand structure, like the whole visibility. So it's about the outlook that you want to take. Today you want to be an international, very global brand. You don't need to be associated with the geography, I feel. And if you really want to engage in with the community, there's brands like Brooklyn Brewery in New York, which do events, promotions to promote the local culture. And where you asked me, what are we doing? So our name, Makadi, which is in Konkani means give me, we want to have that sense of origin from Goa. But at the same time, we want to be very global at the same time. So that's why we've gone with the whole theme of astronauts, where no matter which country you're from, which region you're from, you can still relate to an astronaut, exploring beyond your boundaries. And so sometimes it's all about the brand story that you're trying to build. You want to go with that and have faith in that story, to be honest. So that's geography is something that the person who's making the brand, it depends on him if he wants to keep it in a place or not.
So you just answered my burning question. I was going to ask you what's with the astronaut and how do you arrive at it. Can you tell us what went through that process where, as a beer brand, you have a name that's essentially in Konkani, and that's like a slight tip of the hat to where you're brewing. Yet the astronaut is so removed from that very brand name. So how do you guys come up with that?
So Makadi, the name, was, the whole thing was to give a sense of ownership to the consumers, being it a reflection of what you are trying to consume. Maka, the word Maka just means me. And the whole point was coming out with 5 variants in the first year itself was that I don't expect everyone to like all of my 5 beers. But at least one beer, when the consumer tries, at least one beer is a reflection of yourself. And whereas the astronaut goes, it's more for the exploratory theme, where us as manufacturers are explorers. We are trying above and beyond to come up with unique products for the consumers. Today, like the new beer that we've just launched in February was a Rosé Brut IPA. It was one of the kind in the whole of the country. And it was a pink-colored IPA brewed style, which has never been bottled before. So the whole thing was that, okay, let us as manufacturers try something new. Every product that we've tried to come out in a bottle is something that has not been packaged before in India. And that is how we are trying to be explorers. And you as a consumer, we expect you to try something new, cross your boundary and be like, okay, I've been drinking a certain beer all my life, but let's try something new. And you're that astronaut as well, to go above and beyond out of your comfort zone.
And was the astronaut the first thing that you guys jumped at when you looked at exploration, or were there any other alternative that you fought with before you settled on this?
There was others also, ideas that we were just brainstorming, sitting. There was a pirate that came into mind. There was a Yeti that came into mind. There was multiple other things. But then the astronaut is what stuck with us, and that is what we continued with. And we established ourselves with that mascot. And that's what we are trying to fulfill now.
Thank you. Nikhil, you worked on multiple brands in the beer space over the last fair few years. I wanted to ask you about how important is it to identify your core audience before you start designing a label to reflect your identity. Since distribution can reach multiple segments, especially when you're in retail, how do you ensure that you don't alienate any secondary consumer? So let's say that you've identified a particular consumer segment, you've designed a label around it, but how do you ensure that somebody else, when they look at it on a retail shelf, aren't alienated by what they see?
Yeah, so I'm a little torn on this, to be honest. I mean, I feel like there are 2 ways to go about this. And I feel like when you're in a bottle in retail, it's quite different from when you are in a growler and you're going for the D2C model. So, in a retail situation, the challenges are very different, right? You have like a wall which is like filled with beers, and you're picking one. So there at that stage, definitely you need to you need to resonate with the person who's picking you out, right? Whereas with D2C, there's so much you have to do before that person even lands on that place to actually the buying decision has happened before they come to the portal. So it's chalk and cheese, in my opinion, and we approach it like that. Uh, Again, I'm talking about that same like smaller segment, the influential segment who, if you convince them, then they will, they will promote your brand. I think like designing for them is still so important, and they can see through certain lies, I feel personally. And I'm one of them, right? I myself am a beer consumer. I love beers. I like to go to a shop and I like to see, and I can kind of get like, okay, this guy is trying hard, or this guy is like being genuine. They're not trying to push too hard and say that I am this or I am that, or the message could be layered. I like it when the message is layered, because at a glance I get something, and then the second time I try it I get something more, and the third time I get something even more. Like for example with you, like you, maybe the Astronaut, just the dark label, and you guys use the PP material, silver PP material. So just the label look might appeal to me, and I might pick you out for that reason, right? I don't get the whole Astronaut story or any of that, but I will pick it because I like how it looks. And then after that, I start a conversation with the packaging, with what I'm seeing, and I start to move through the layers that you guys have built out, and that is what is important. As long as there are those layers, that is, I will connect to it. Because if you, I'm sorry, but if we're talking about like Kingfisher or any commercial brewing, commercial beer, it's just, there's nothing for me to travel through. I'm done. I see it, I'm done. Okay, this is this beer, done. So that to me is an important journey as a consumer, especially in the craft industry, because so much love goes into it. It needs to come through.
So much like the beers, we want the labels to be multi-layered too.
Yes, exactly.
Anish, can you tell us about the sort of research that went into identifying your target audience before you started the whole journey of brand identity, which then translated into your packaging?
So when we started, we did a lot of research, which market segment that we want to approach. There was a wide variety, So we tried to cater to the masses. In not just the masses, like as a commercial beer, but how many people can we appeal to? That was our target goal. And we needed to find something that was relatable. So the whole brand story that we tried to build was something that we could reach out and we can have it relatable to multiple people, as many people as possible, basically. I definitely know that I cannot not have to alienate people, but that's with every brand. No brand can try to get everyone's attention. So we're just trying our best out there with our branding, to basically just attract people to our brand. So our label, we worked a lot on our label designs, that once it's on the shelf, people are just curious by looking at it, that it's something unique, and they want to pick it up, just pick it up and have a look at the label. After that, it's the customer's choice if they want to drink it, they want to buy it or not. We can just hope for the best at that point.
So just one add-on to what Nikhil said. Was there any reassurance at the back of your mind knowing that a lot of these commercial labels are very straightforward? They're just, you get what you give. There's a large brand name. There might or might not be an animal. I don't know why in India we seem to love our animals when we name our beers. But there may be something from the animal kingdom, and that's it. And there's no story there. There's no layer there. There's nothing to travel through. So while you were creating your own identity, was there something at the back of your mind which said, hey, you know what? There are a lot of people who are doing this, but I think no matter what we do, our thought process is right, because we are going to be different from them. So did that give you any reassurance?
Yes. So, okay, so how we have, you send out the pointers, right? Let's skip to one of the pointers ahead. How you spoke about, like, craft is all about being fun, right? That's what the connotation is. But I beg to differ on that. It's just because craft is not just about fun, it's about individuality. Today, you can have the most sadistic label also, but it has to be individual. It will cater to the needs of a certain specific consumers, like specific market share that's out there. So the whole thing was that when we were coming up with a brand, we tried to build it for as many people as possible. That was the only thing. And the individuality is what matters the most. Today, the astronaut and my name is what I felt was apt for the brand, right? And apt for the beer that we are trying to create, or apt for the brand that we are trying to create. And only, like I said, we can only hope and we can only pray for the fact that it is accepted by the market. And that is what we are trying. We cannot enforce ourselves upon the consumers that you have to like something, right? That's the whole point about craft.
Thanks. Nikhil, you were talking about going to a retail store, seeing a wall of beer, looking at a couple, maybe picking some up and saying, oh, these guys are trying too hard. I want to ask you something about authenticity. How do you ensure that a consumer believes the story that he or she reads on a label? What are the factors that underline brand authenticity? I mean, of course, the question is to the both of you, but since you said that, you can take a first crack.
That's really interesting because we work with brands, right? So many brands who have certain claims, and of course, we can't do like, I mean, maybe we are not there yet. Maybe someday we will, where when a brand comes to us and says that, okay, we are ethically sourced ingredients and, our labels are all 100% recyclable and whatever. And I want you to include this in our story. We can't do a background check. We're not there yet. Like, they'll be like, okay, screw you. We'll work with the other agency. So, but yeah, we do. I do try to get into that headspace of the client to understand what they really, whether they're really like, down on that promise that they're giving. For example, I'll give you a non-beer example. We worked with Umami Brew recently. They're a kombucha brand, and they've started filtering their kombucha, right? And now a kombucha purist will say that, hey, this is not kombucha. It does not taste like kombucha. But I don't know, you may also know that, is it a kombucha is like, can be debated.
Yes, it is a kombucha.
It is a kombucha because of the way it's been made. But it's been filtered and like you've stopped the process. It's dead at that point.
It doesn't stop the process.
It doesn't? Okay.
It doesn't stop the process.
Okay, it doesn't stop the process. But at least in this case, it's very clear. It looks really nice and all of that. But I personally, like, I've had kombuchas in the past, and the drink to me didn't taste like a kombucha. So I told the client that, look, this is probably not, we should probably change how we position this. And that's when the conversation started, where we positioned it, changed the positioning from a kombucha, like a good for you, kombuchas are in this good for you category. Then you have a lifestyle category. And you have this like a functional beverage category, which is like a fusion beverage, which is not bad for you, but it's not great for you either. So that's where we've positioned them, and we've changed even the hierarchy of information to make it more about this being just a nice drink to have, rather than this being a good for you kombucha, which is like, full of probiotics. And like, we've cut back on all the goodness aspect and just made it just a appealing drink. Like, I want to have this, and it's yummy, and it's going to be good. So I think, to answer your question, like, yeah, there are lots of these claims that are made. I would say, like, honestly, we should take them with a pinch of salt. We should do our research. Nowadays, people have figured out ways to navigate, like, label content, like sugar, no sugar. That's not true. There is sugar. It's from some other source. But yeah, I mean, the consumers at this point in time, I think, still at a little nascent stage. They'll get smart. They'll start seeing through whatever you're saying. So it's important to be true and find your space, you know, whether it's in however you want to, but you have to find your space and you have to be firm there.
Please, Anisha.
Yeah. So we can make as many claims as we want, you know. Nobody is stopping us. 90% of the people can't even probably tell us, find out if we are not adhering to the claims that we are making. But as a brand owner, as an ethical person, it's my responsibility to show the consumers proof with data and numbers, or evidence that what we are claiming we are doing. There are multiple ways to do so, through social media marketing, through our website, through events where I do a claim, where I put up a claim on my website or my social media where I'm saying I'm engaging the local community. How do I prove it? I prove it through my brewery tours, where, when you come to the brewery, I will portray, you will see that the local community is being engaged in the brewery. And again, I can't expect people to believe me till they see it with their own eyes. So I have to keep doing different events, propagandas, and marketing stunts or whatever to keep portraying that we are actually true to our kind. And we are being ethical as to whatever claims we are doing. Today, like our zero sugar kombucha also that we make, we exactly make sure that there is no sugar, residual sugar in it, because I want that claim to be true. We are young brands, we are not established for 100 years, 200 years, or even 10, 15 years. If people don't believe us, I have a lifespan of like 5 years or 10 years then. If I want to last for another 100 years, for another 20 years also, I need to do what I'm saying. So I need to work on that, and it is just through, one-on-one with the consumer, engaging the consumer with the brand so that they can understand what we are trying to do, and hopefully they understand that we are true to our kind.
Nice, thank you. You mentioned the term fun earlier. As a marketer, a lot of times when I get a brief, it's very excited people who say, oh, our brand is a fun brand. And you have a lot of times when, that may or may not be true. I'm sure, Nikhil, you've come across this as well, when a brand wants to be something, but they're actually not that. But one thing that keeps cropping up is that we're a fun brand, and craft beer brands have a tendency to strive for the infusion of fun in their visual identity. So, but fun itself is a broad concept. What is deemed funny in one circle may not be to another. And how do you tackle this? Back in the day, we used to say that when a customer picks up my bottle and they look at the label, the front label engages them to pick up the bottle, and when they read the back label, maybe they get a half smile, and we're all searching for that half smile, right? Where you've built some sort of an initial connection with your consumer. So how is that half smile when a customer picks up your beer for the first time and goes through the label overrated?
No, it's a great thing to strive for. But yeah, that half smile is an expensive one. It's not easy to get. We try to do that in projects, obviously. And yeah, it does not have to be like fun is one of them, I would say. But there are many other ways to do that, to get that half smile. It could be through danger. In my last presentation, I spoke about familiarity, curiosity, and danger. Like even danger could give you that weird half smile that you question yourself. Like, why am I finding this entertaining? So there are ways to do it, and I think yeah. In fact, going down that typical fun way is like almost too easy, and then it's the half smile is actually the smile that comes from inside, like the smile in the mind. There's a ha 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 type of smile, and then there's the smile in your mind. And I feel like the smile in your mind is like the more complex one, and we'd love to get those. That's what we strive for. But if the brand is going for that, not in every case.
So just to ask you one more thing, when, say a brand comes to you and says, "Hey, we want to have a really fun identity and a very fun label," what is the first thing you ask them, or what would be the first couple of questions that you would ask them? I mean, like, what level of fun, right? Like, what do you mean by fun? Are you a fun brand? Are you those sort of people? Is that what goes through your mind?
No, I would say like, I mean, there are various places where you could queue up fun, right? Like, does it have to be on your label? Does it have to be in your logo? Can your Instagram be fun? I mean, you have to, there's a place to do certain things. Like, for example, just like you, as you said, fun. I had recently a brand who said, we want to be punk. Right? And I was like, great, let's do punk. I'd love to do punk. And we built this full punk brand, right? And eventually and we did this project through lockdown. And finally, when I actually got to know the brand and got to know the people behind it, I realized that this is not a punk brand from any angle. So we had to literally rebrand them because otherwise I look like the idiot, you know? So yeah, sometimes that happens, you know, like, what happens very often, I've noticed this, that breweries, especially like craft beer, the owners like to put themselves into the brand, and that is good. I respect that. When there's a strong personality in the people behind the brand, yes, it should come through. Sometimes it should come through. Sometimes maybe not. Sometimes you want a story. Like, I don't know if you guys, if astronauts was something that you all wanted to be when you were kids. Is that? Maybe, yeah, maybe. So, I mean, there are some people who are like, when we're doing our strategy session with them, we're trying to unlock the brand by conversations with them. And we realize that, man, this guy is somewhere else and what he wants is something else. So, it's horses for courses. Different situations require different solutions.
Anish, you were talking about being individualistic with your branding and your label, but even if you weren't gunning for fun, that just happened on your labels. Like, it's in the actions that the astronaut is taking care of, like a honey ale where he's extracting honey from a hive on a satellite, for example. So how did that happen? Like, was that just a byproduct of the individualism you were seeking, or was that also something you wanted to be as you went along?
We definitely wanted to be fun. Okay, let's come back to stereotyping, everyone who's trying to start a brand. But again, with humorous perspective, and that's how the individualism comes into play. Today, like I said, like in the first question, that you had asked, we said that, we can just hope that the masses or the consumers like what you're doing on your label or with the product. And that is what we hope when we design these. It was humorous for us, and we hope that it was humorous for other people as well. And, in like the latter part of this question was, do we strive for that half smile? Today, in today's day and age, everyone is bombarded with marketing and advertisement, So at that point, when there's marketing and advertisement all around you, that half smile is precious to us. Is because that half smile is what makes us impactful and makes us relatable to the consumer, so that it sticks in their head and they remember us. So probably in the future they pick us up from the shelves.
I'd like to add one small thing to this, is that, how when, what an Easter egg concept is? Like, you have an Easter egg in something. I always feel like we like to kind of put that into some of the work we do, because that basically makes some insiders to the brand. So you're having a Makadi, I'm having a Makadi, and if you show me that, hey, did you know this about, like, there's this thing in this.
Did you see this tiny element that, most people miss out on?
And that conversation, I will never forget. It's like you have got me. So those kind of Easter eggs to put into a brand is is great. And those are those layers that I was talking about, like, which are always very, very beneficial.
Anish, back to you on this one. I mean, to both of you, but starting with you, and I'll tell you why. I'm talking about culture. So visual nods to elements of popular and counterculture. And these are often used to reinforce the story being communicated on a label. How do you select the cultural associations that are represented on a label and ensure that the consumer understands them fairly quickly? Now, why I want to start with you is every label of yours tells a story, right? I have Belgian monk astronaut. I have honey extractor astronaut in space. I have an astronaut on a lazy boy video gaming on an American ale. I have a lot of questions about that one, but that might be for another conversation.
Never released that one.
So how do you actually select the cultural references that you're using on a label? And how do you ensure that your broad consumer base will actually get it fairly quickly?
Again, we can hope for the best. You know, every branding team needs to have somebody from the human psychology background. You know, they are the ones who know best what the consumer requires. You know, but again, at the end of the day, me and my brother, we put in all our effort for every label out there, and we had faith in ourselves. Today, when we started our brand, we wanted the brand to represent us as co-founders of that brand. And we had to just believe in ourselves. We did not care what the marketing team is saying. We did not care what our designer is saying. We cared what we wanted. And sometimes, you know, that is what brings out the individuality in the brand, is that, you know, the co-founders are believing, or the founders of the company are believing in what they are doing. And they're doing what they want, not listening to everyone else. Today, you can listen to 1,000 people out there, but then you're lost. You're just lost out there and you have no direction. So sometimes it's important to do what you want to do with your brand than to listen to everyone and come up with you have, like, ideas will keep coming in. You will get overwhelmed at one point, but then you have to not be overwhelmed and put your finger down and be like, I want this. And you go ahead with this, hoping that it goes well.
Nikhil, your thoughts? You are one of the leading branding and design agencies in the country. Are you a human psychologist as well?
I'm not a human psychologist, but I kind of, like, very often find myself as being the target audience for many of these brands, right? And beer aside, we do a lot of other stuff. We do, you know, food-related things, and they do see value in working with us because we are the TG. So what I think, I'm not just saying it from, like, it's not just me versus the client, like, hey, I think it should be red, and the client's like, no, I think it should be blue. So that conversation has no end, right? So it's always like, what does the brand need? What do the people want? What does the consumer need? But yeah, coming back to cultural references, definitely. I mean, you know, if you see, like, what the visual culture is in packaging that you see abroad, it's just gone to some other level now. Like, I don't know if you've seen End of Days by I think Dogfish Head. They had put this taxidermy squirrel. They put a bottle inside it in a taxidermy squirrel, and that was from Ice Age, right? Like the whole Ice Age squirrel thing, End of Days. So, like, taking cues from popular culture is great. Like, I mean, you guys have done it with the Astronaut. Everybody knows the Astronaut. So you got to play with those things, but you have to give it a twist. You have to give it something more than like how you guys have done, right? Like, you got to take it and push that idea further. For example, like with us, and these are one of those hidden Easter eggs. Like in the Great State, crazy, you know, the collage of, like, stamps that we have. There's one of the elements is a broken crown. Have you noticed that? So there's a broken crown, and if you see any big beer has a crown, it's by the state, it's state approved, you know. So you take that crown and you break it, say that this is not state approved, this is anti-establishment. So that's kind of like those little things which I'm sure nobody knows this, and probably they will get rebranded now and it'll just be forgotten, but I got my kick out of it, and I think some people also maybe did. notice that. But yeah, those are those Easter eggs that I was talking about.
Nice. For my last question, I want to talk about any broad guidelines that you can leave us with today. So are there any broad guidelines or approximate percentages of how labeled real estate should be divided between visuals, story text, and essential information? Now, I know, of course, the government mandates certain things, so keeping that aside, since this is impacted by the size of the label, you have wraparound labels, you have cans which have a lot of real estate, you have dual labels, front and back, etc. Is there a method to arrive at a cost-benefit analysis for this? I mean, what are you giving up and what are you achieving?
So how I like to go about it is through information hierarchy, right? I don't think there is any clear like guideline that I can just put a blanket rule out here to say that aisa karte hai. No, but it's hierarchy. So what we normally do is an exercise where we do information hierarchy. We will say that, okay, this is your brand name, this is your tagline, this is your variant name, this is your kind of, the benefits or the USP of what's in it for the consumer. And you list these things out and you then start shuffling, it's hierarchy. So you take something, make it big, and hierarchy doesn't just have to be big and small, right? Hierarchy could be like, I can isolate something in a lot of white space and it will shout out louder than something that is in like 72 point size, big text, right? So there are many ways to navigate information hierarchy, but it's the conversation between the founder or the marketing person or whoever is in charge and us is that, what do you want to say loudest? If you're a new beer, you want to say your brand name because that's the first thing you want to establish. Maybe some people have different strategy where they want to make the SKU get popular. Like I have had clients who have said that, no, I don't want my brand name to be the first thing you see, but I want my variant name because I want that to become its own brand later. I want to detach it later, for example. So it's down to what the intention is, to be honest. So.
Anish, anything to add to that?
I agree with Nikhil. The moment we put guidelines to making a label, you're going the commercial route. And in the craft industry, we can't have any guidelines. Today, if I want my whole label to just have my brand name on it, I can do that. If I want my whole label to not have my brand name, just an artwork on it, I can do that. And that's the beauty about craft. That brings out the individuality that we've been speaking about all this while. You can do what you want. You can hope that it resonates with your consumers, and you have to try your best. And today, putting a guideline to a label is what the government is doing, and we will adhere to it. But there shouldn't be any guidelines. The people should have the choice to make their labels the way they want to and call it true to craft. That's it.
Do you know of this guideline? I came across this while we were working on Moonshine, that you're not supposed to put a woman on a craft beer, on a alcohol brand.
That is...
Have you heard of this? This is real.
Yeah, I know about it. We were talking at the time.
We were talking about it just blew my mind. I was like, oh, why?
So, may I? I mean, can I share? So there was this distributor, and they were trying to get this brand of spirits down from abroad, and it showed a guy and a girl ballroom dancing on the label. It was a cartoon representation. It wasn't an actual photograph, and they ran into issues that to change the label. Around the same time, from what I heard, I don't know if this is true, but I heard it from a very reliable source. While they were in that sweeping motion of, are there ladies represented on alcohol labels? Apparently, somebody was called in to answer why. Is it Queen Victoria on Bombay Sapphire? There's a queen head, right? That was questioned as to why is it on the label. So we go through phases, and certain rules pop up and are established to a greater extent. But
so with me, I'll tell you, when I just started the brand, we not registered our labels also, and the first query that came from the excise department was, your label doesn't say beer anywhere. I'm like, do I need to actually mention the word beer? I'm like, ale means beer, right? So, but they wanted the word beer. It can be anywhere on the label. It can be at the back in like a tiny minuscule form, but it needs to be there. So those guidelines we can never understand, but we just got to do it and get the business going, you know. It's at that point.
Thank you so much, guys. This has been an insightful discussion. I'm going to open it up to the audience if you have any questions for the panel. Okay. Do you understand?
Hello. So, it was fun listening to all of you guys talk about brands and all that. Couple of points like I saw was about this whole fun factor. So, I think the fun gets lost when everybody is trying to do fun. So, I think you touched upon individual. So, when people try to be individual and authentic, I think that's more important than the fun factor. Of course, it's nice to have a laugh and have that stand out. So I felt, but everybody's tone is so similar. So when that happens, I think it's difficult to stand out in that kind of a setup. Which brings me as a segue to another point, which is the tone of the messages that we put out for craft beer. So what I generally see these days, and maybe it's a trend, is to have this tongue-in-cheek kind of humor that's being used for all the messaging. That is also sort of getting tiresome, I feel. And there's like a whole spectrum, from outright, sacrilege to, on one end, to like, mild, suggestive kind of humor, So that I felt was also being overdone. And still it's fun to do these kinds, and it's also used in corporate level, Silicon Valley businesses where we are in the middle of Bangalore. So that kind of messaging is also used. But I feel at some level, when everybody is using the same tone, again, it comes down to that. So you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'll take that. So I think like it kind of, hello? Yeah. To answer your question, I think like at some level, this is like a bit of an early craft beer as an industry is still at a little bit of a nascent stage out here. And yes, we are now sitting with all craft beer folk. So for us, it's not. But to the average person, they feel like, if you start getting snooty, like there's the snooty side of it. I love that. I love to get all technical into these things. But we have to kind of taper the message down to make it accessible. And I think maybe that's where keeping it accessible is kind of like you can say like the easy way to get to the larger piece of the pie. Of course, if you're now talking to just pure IPA lovers, then your messaging can be very different, very much more nuanced and layered and things like that. But if you're talking, and if your sales channel is kind of looking more at the large piece of the pie, then you have to keep your humor also accessible.
Nothing to add to that. What Nikhil is saying is like same thing, but like again, you have to stand out in the crowd, right? That's what you're trying to say. And you will never be able to stand out in the crowd nowadays. Initially, back in the day when there were just 2 brands or 3 brands out there, it was much easier. And today with so many people out there competing for the same thing, I don't believe it's a competition, firstly. We are here to give more to the consumers. That is what I believe in. And again, something might relate to you, which might not relate to the other person, and that's perspective. And because of this large population, we can live on that perspective, that there are multiple brands and some of those brands relate to some people and the other brands relate to the other people. And we're not here to compete with each other, rather than give what the consumer wants, rather than push a product into their faces that you need to drink this and you need to have this. And that is what we are looking for. So making as many products possible is a good thing, that the consumers can choose what they want to consume.
Anish, it's fun that you say that because our first panel tomorrow morning is on differentiation in a crowded marketplace.
I had one more.
Sure. Yeah, we'll come to you after.
What do you guys see in labeling these days in terms of what is working in the Indian market? Is woke labeling really the thing that people are doing now? And yeah, wherein you say like, oh, sugar-free, ethically sourced malt or yeast or, that kind of stuff. Is it really something that a consumer cares about these days? Again, it comes down to, okay, initially it was something that was a trend and people cared about it. What are your thoughts on this one?
So we did touch on authenticity and customers believing what they read and brands walking the talk as opposed to just slapping it on a label. But would you guys want to add something else to that?
Yeah, I think that we kind of spoke about it. But I think being woke is good. Like, I think it's important to know. And yes, it's kind of like overdone sometimes, but it's good to know what you're getting into.
I feel woke labels in India is a must, is because India has a very premature market compared to the rest of the world, especially like the Western market that we are talking about. I'll just give you an example, like kombucha. Kombucha in the US, if you have a kombucha brand there, you can just write plain kombucha on the label. People will know it's it's probiotic, it's fermented, it's antioxidant properties, it's polyphenol, it has got polyphenols and multiple other health benefits. They don't need to be woke. Why? Because it's a mature market. People have been educated about the product, so they don't need to mention anything on the label. They can just mention the product. Whereas in India, we have a larger population. Firstly, we have 4 times the population of a country like US, and we are still not there that we just write the word kombucha on it and expect 1.5 billion people to understand what kombucha means. So till we do not, as manufacturers, till we do not make the effort to educate our consumers, it is our loss, it is the consumer's loss, and we are getting nowhere. So the initial brands that come up with these products, they have to make the effort to teach the consumers why have extra hops in your beer, or why have specially sourced yeast in your beer, or why drink kombucha, or whatever. Any craft product, why is the question. Every curious human being wants to know why they should do something like that. And it's the manufacturers that have to portray it in their brand, that they understand and educate the people so that they can move towards a healthier lifestyle.
For too long have we been shackled by insipid promises on labels. We had a question in the back.
Hi, my question is mainly to Nikhil. Craft beer is not only a nascent industry in Maharashtra, it's also it's a constantly evolving one. So now that you marry your design sensibilities with the strategy of the brand, etc., and because it's evolving and our objectives also keep changing from the brand's perspective, what I want to ask is that once you implement a particular project, what are the mechanisms you employ after that to kind of find out whether it's working or not? Because as small brands, we don't really have the resources. Our sample size is small. We don't have resources to do any kind of a market research or employ that in a very scientific way. So what are the mechanisms that you employ to find out whether those objectives are being met?
I think we don't have any specific, or at least this would be an agency that our client would have to employ, like a consumer insights research agency, for example, to understand like whether this is working or a particular campaign is working. And anyways, we are not, I don't think you are, apart from doing Instagram ads, you're not doing like outdoors or anything like that, advertising, big advertising. So I don't know whether there are any like real ways to say to gauge this. I guess your sales would be like the best like reflector of this. You could do it in like how kind of like A/B testing happens. So do something for a while, switch it off, switch to something else for a while, see that continuously do some messaging, stop that messaging, change the messaging, see how that other thing kind of, reflected. Do it for events, use events. I think events are a great way to also try these things on. Like for one event, use a certain messaging. For the next event, completely change your messaging. See how post-event, what has that done for you? And because I don't think we're like in that like large-scale advertising format where we can gauge and track these things.
Yeah, like what Nikhil said, sales is the best way to go about it. You need to see your product offtake. Today, if you're getting multiple reorders on a certain product, it means it's working. Why do you want to change it? You just have to be patient about it, that it becomes big enough. So today, patience is obviously key to any successful business, right? But at the same time, yes, okay, I'll tell you a good example that we also had an issue with. So we had a Borecha O, which is a zero sugar prebiotic kombucha. And it was we went for a very simple, very modernized label, very minimalistic label where it is a completely white background with a little bit of color on it, saying a brand name in a very thin font. And we had a very low consumer offtake on that product. So within 1 year of that product's launching, we've already rebranded that label and we are coming out again. Why? Because we got to know that through our sales data that the product offtake is low. Second was consumer feedback as do we need any change in the flavor profile of the product. That was something that we were getting from our distributors, our retailers, even events that we were present at. And we have completely rebranded our product into a kombucha seltzer, which is firstly one of its kind in the market. And it helped us gain a better perspective and helped us make a better product for the consumers. And today I'm very happy with what we've come up with after a year. So there will be certain times that you will launch a product into the market and you will have to do a market study and rebrand it. But don't be scared to do that. It's just keep going ahead, that is what craft is about. Make your product better with time, not worse. You got to increase the quality of your product, not decrease the quality of your product. Rather it be packaging, rather it be the product inside.
Thanks.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
What was your favorite label that you've worked on so far? Nikhil and...
I guess it's favorite label that I think like personally, if you were to ask me as a designer personally, I would say like the Moonshine label, because that was where I could drop my designer hat and stop thinking about the benefit of the brand and all of those things and move more into like just an indulgent approach to saying that I'm just going to do my thing and here, take this, That's about it.
Any more questions? Okay, that's a wrap then, guys. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us all this insight. I'm sure we are taking away a lot of stuff from here. And thanks for being around. Let's go grab a beer. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Cheers.